Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me know how I sound in chat. Make sure my settings are good. Da-da. If you guys can, please hit that like button. I feel like this case has gone super cold, and there's information that's been sent to me. It's been out there for a long time, but it's sadly just not gone to the mainstream public at all. And sadly, I think this case definitely could get rolling again with the right amount of attention. And trust me, guys, you're in for a big live show. I am so excited to present this, and I am lucky that a certain individual reached out to me to present this stuff. I promise you guys, this will be mind-blowing. Once again, it has been out there, but again, nobody's covered it. And this is like legit data. This isn't just like theories, thrown out there, to kind of back up, a foul play aspect. This is like legit data that is in there. It's in the police report, and it tells a completely different story than the one that we kind of, if you're familiar with the case, know of. If you don't, of course, we'll recap everything. So if you haven't heard of this case, no worries, got you covered. We're going to go through the entire timeline. But I promise you guys, once we get to the middle point, it'll blow you guys' mind. But I just want to quickly, before we get started with this, shout out to the people who donated. I set up a GoFundMe, and I've reached like half my goal. Thank you so much. I wish I could thank each individual personally. I do on the app. I don't know if people actually get notified of that, but I have tried to thank every single person that has donated. And I'll kind of mention again maybe halfway through the live when more people tune in, because I want to make sure that I'm showing my immense gratitude for you guys doing this. It's truly amazing. A huge shout out to my wonderful mods, D, Sensei, and NJazz coming in here. Already working, it looks like. But again, yeah, this is Daniel Robinson. Went missing June 23rd, 2021. It's been over 4 years since he went missing. This happened, I think, before the Guy Batito case. Because I remember kind of seeing it. And then, of course, you know how big Guy Batito case became. I mean, that's when I started my channel. And so, anybody that went missing kind of just got overshadowed. I mean, that's how, mainstream media works. But this is a case that has been wild. And we're going to go over it if you're not familiar with it. And then we will get to actual data from not only his vehicle, but his phone. That kind of contradicts kind of the narrative that was put out there. And I promise you guys, this will be well worth it. If you can, hit the like button, share it, share the link. I promise you guys, been working on this for pretty much a week, trying to understand the details, because there's a lot to this case. And again, I couldn't even do it in one show. I have a huge show, and this is just like a part one of what could be like 10 parts easily, but I tried to break it down where it's least confusing as possible, because believe me, as I have covered this case once before on this channel, and remember kind of digging into the details and going like, wow, there's a lot, because it has to do with the data from his vehicle and so on. So anyway, let's get this set up real quick. We got 100 people in here. Thank you to everybody. Again, his dad, his father, literally, I think it went live 2 days ago, or maybe it was yesterday. He's got his own YouTube channel and everything, which the Twitter and Instagram is there. If I can, I'll try to find the link to his the father's YouTube channel, because they're always going out and searching for Daniel. They've even found a skull when they were searching for Daniel Robinson. I forget all the details of what the search has uncovered, but it's uncovered other stuff, which is pretty wild. So let's get into it. Yes, thank you, Princess. Good to see you, Bushi. Good to see you, Denise. God bless. I'll kind of shout people out as we go. Ruru, good to see you. Huge shout out to Omi, Justice for Daniel. Yes. All right, let's start it, and I'll kind of shout people out as we go. But here's just kind of the background on Daniel.
Daniel Cornelius Robinson was a 24-year-old African-American man born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina. He was the youngest of 4 siblings and described by his family as intelligent, ambitious, and faith-driven. Robinson graduated from the College of Charleston in 2019 with a degree in geology, where he excelled academically and developed a passion for environmental science. After graduation, he pursued his career in the field, initially interning in Flagstaff, Arizona, before relocating to the Phoenix area in 2020. By 2021, he had settled in Tempe, Arizona, and was employed as an entry-level hydrogeologist, also referred to as a field geologist, for Matrix New World Engineering, an environmental consulting firm. His role involved fieldwork at remote sites, including assessing groundwater and soil samples in the desert. In arid Arizona, new housing projects.
So, a quick little fun fact for those that have been following my channel, know Carolyn from Unearthed Secrets. She also is a geologist, so she's definitely invested in this case too. And if we hopefully get to do more parts to this, enough people get invested. I don't know if she'd have time to maybe come on the show, but if jumping ahead, if we get to kind of some theories and to some possible motives of his disappearance, it'd be cool to have her on the show, because what I'm going to show right here could be a motive as to what may have happened if it was foul play. But I just want to quickly shout out Omi. Thank you so much for the $20. And Martini, thank you so much. Both of you guys, Justice for Daniel. God bless you guys. Thank you so much. And Jazz for always gifting a Mob Crew membership. That is so sweet. God bless. Okay, so he worked for Matrix New World. And again, they're out there. Oops, I hate this thing. I hate this thing so bad that Windows 11 does. Make sure I get the screen right here. So this is the company he worked for. And apparently the boss's son was a friend of his that he met. And I may not get the details exactly right, but apparently he got this job by meeting the boss's son. And they got talking, and then somehow he ended up working for this Matrix New World. So what is Matrix New World, and what do they do, and what was Daniel doing? And so here's this explanation. And as you'll see in the background, this is kind of one of the issues with Arizona and other places, Southwest America and others.
E.g., subdivisions or master-planned communities require rigorous environmental due diligence to secure building permits from agencies like the Arizona Department of Water Resources, ADWR. Developers must prove the site has a sustainable water supply to support residents for at least 100 years, as mandated by state laws like the Assured Water Supply Program. This prevents overexploitation of groundwater, which is the primary source in much of the state. Matrix New World Engineering was contracted for such a project on behalf of Weber Water Resources, a water management firm, conducting fieldwork at a remote well drilling site near Sun Valley Parkway and Cactus Road in Buckeye, Arizona, about 30 miles west of Phoenix. This area is prime for expansion due to its proximity to growing suburbs, but its desert environment demands proof of viable resources.
So this is the big thing. They've got to show that if they're going to build like a big new housing development, there's so many things in play. And one of them is they got to show proof that they have enough water for at least 100 years. And that is obviously an issue. And of course, so many corporations get invested. And of course, this is way over my pay grade. But, I'm assuming that, they're going to try to push for, to prove those water levels and then also the soil as well, which is obviously where he kind of comes into play, Daniel being a geologist. And as you can see, what I was just showing there is a housing development that, as you can see, went nowhere because they didn't have that
program. This prevents overexploitation.
The resources that they need to sustain these kind of new developments.
Of groundwater, which is the primary source in much of the state. Matrix New World Engineering was contracted for such a project on behalf of Weber Water Resources, a water management firm, conducting fieldwork at a remote well drilling site near Sun Valley Parkway and Cactus Road in Buckeye, Arizona, about 30 miles west of Phoenix. This area is prime for expansion due to its proximity to growing suburbs, but its desert environment demands proof of viable resources.
Thank you guys so much for hitting that like button. But yeah, it's sad, these nice little homes getting built and then they can't sustain them because of water or energy. But yeah, that's in a nutshell what Daniel and that company they do, or at least in this contract, is to look at the water levels and test the soil as well. And so now we get into a little bit of his background. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Again, there's so many aspects. But this kind of goes into what the police narrative wants you to think. I thought it'd just only be fair to at least kind of bring this up, just to kind of give a little backstory before he went missing. So he also worked for Instacart, which is kind of right as DoorDash was starting to become popular and stuff, or just before DoorDash. Same exact thing. People order, and then people, like himself, go out and deliver. So apparently, in mid-June or early June, he went to deliver to this lady's house named Caitlin. They were drinking and thought he was the nice guy and actually invited him in. There was apparently two ladies there. And anyway, I guess they, one of them, him and Caitlin, kind of hit it up, and then she talked about a podcast that she was into. I think a little bit of religious with kind of telling yourself to be kind of more humble. And anyway, so he goes there. He ends up leaving this canopy for, I believe, his vehicle at the place. That's weird. I just lost my... That's weird. Okay, we're still good. Okay, that's weird. Okay, I just had like a drop. Let me know if you guys can hear me and everything's good. Okay, everything looks all right. Okay, I apologize. This had a little bit of latency, and it dropped my chat, which sucks. All right, continuing on. So these are the conversations that he left between the two there. Multitasking here. Okay, good. That was weird. I just kind of dropped my chat. But anyway, he left his canopy there, and it kind of felt, we read these, but I'm not going to go too much into it. It kind of felt like he kind of felt for her, and she wasn't feeling the same, right? And anyway, he had left his canopy there, and then also He was trying to come pick it up, but then he was also kind of leaving messages like saying, hey, I'm going to come by and pick it up when she was out of town, and she didn't like that. And then she had a door cam or ring camera or something like that set up, and she's like, hey, I just saw you on the camera. And anyway, it kind of turns into a thing where, again, I think he's just kind of being a young kid and, reading maybe the wrong message from that night that he spent overnight with the lady, Caitlin. And anyway, kind of sends her some messages, kind of being, some people use the word creepy. But he's basically sent her some messages saying, can I pick up this canopy? And they've kind of exchanged through the days. Eventually he does pick it up, and then he tells her that, yeah, I went and picked it up, and she was kind of confused by it because apparently he came unannounced, and she was telling him, please don't come unannounced. And then he kind of starts with, hey, are you okay with me? And she says, no, it's not normal or acceptable. And clearly it's just kind of a case where he, in my opinion, he got mixed messages, and probably felt that she was into him, and that was not the case. And anyway, so we get to the message, because this was the message that if you guys remember, if you were familiar with this case, this is one that went out in the mainstream. This is the text before he went missing. And it says, the world can get better, but I'll have to take all the time I can, or we can. Whatever to name it, either I'll see you again or I'll never see you again. So it kind of shows that he's kind of going to a dark place. And also the days leading up, some of the friends also noticed that he's kind of acting different as well. Now, this does still kind of line into his mental health. But yeah, moving on.
Worked together, and they ended up becoming good friends. Even after...
So there's this friend, Roger, who's a coworker / friend that he lived with for a bit, and then he ended up getting his own apartment. He saw him the last 2 days leading up to his disappearance, said that he was kind of acting a little bit different. He was telling about the podcast, because remember when he went and spent the night with the girls that invited him over drinking, she told him about this podcast, and it looks like he got into it. And from what I understand, I've never listened to it. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but apparently it's, tell you to be kind of more humble and stuff like that. So here's just a little bit of Roger, and then we'll get into the day of his disappearance.
Daniel moved into his Tempe apartment, he and Roger would still talk often. At the time of Daniel's disappearance, Roger was helping Daniel build a gaming PC. He was telling him what kind of equipment and parts he needed to buy, and they also chatted a lot about NBA basketball, and sometimes they would meet to drink beer and watch basketball. Roger said that because Daniel was a field guy, they didn't see each other in the office too much, and Roger was actually out of town 20 seconds the day before he goes missing. And when Roger came in, Daniel once again asked Roger if he wanted to go get breakfast. This time they left the office in Daniel's Jeep, and they drove around talking. Daniel mentioned something about a girl again, and he asked Roger, what if there was a girl you liked, but you couldn't have? Roger said, listen, if you like a girl, shoot your shot, ask her out, tell her that you like her. Daniel once again began making comments about his ego and making similarly odd statements and asking similarly odd questions. Now, it's never specified what these odd questions are. And this is because this is coming straight from...
So again, that's kind of one of the things you hear is some of the people that knew him said that, he's kind of acting a little bit different. Even at work when he was last seen, he had some samples with him because he has, they have an office that they work out of, but he's kind of a field tech, so he's more out in the field, whereas I think his friend Roger is more in the office working and stuff like that. So now we get to the timeline of his disappearance. Didn't he tell a family member about the situation? I can't remember. I I was looking more into. I was so focused on some of these other stuff that it's possible that he would have shared. Like if you're talking about like the situation with the girl, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. But that's an area I don't want to speculate on or talk about because I just haven't looked too much into that. But anyway, so here we go into his disappearance. And as you notice, it says scenario A. We'll have a scenario A and B, and this will explain itself as we get into scenario B.
It's 6:30 a.m. in the suburbs of Phoenix. 24-year-old hydrogeologist Daniel Robinson leaves his home in Tempe, Arizona. He's headed west toward Buckeye to inspect a series of remote water wells scattered across the desert. One of his first stops is a site undergoing inspection for a new well that's being drilled. After taking photos and calling his supervisor to report his findings, Daniel continued.
So he left his home at approximately 6:26 a.m. Now, what you're going to see here, thanks to Stephanie Harlow, great channel, of course, and her side channel with, I forget his name, but great guy as well, the guy that was on Big Brother. I'm sure you guys remind me in chat. But here we're going to see his odometer. Now, don't really worry about the mileage. We're not going to focus on this in this live. There's so many aspects, and I really want to get to his phone data versus this car data, and where you're going to have your minds blown if you haven't heard of this, which I don't think most people have. But more specifically, the times.
System at 6:26 a.m. The odometer.
So as you can see, what I did is I added in here like where he was kind of at during these times. So again, I know we have the odometer stuff, and it is important data, but I don't want to get like too like confusing. So Derek, thank you, Amy Lynn. Yeah, I love him. It's funny. Just before my mom passed, I think we were watching. That was when. Yeah, she got me into Big Brother because she loved reality shows, and when I'd come over, we'd watch Big Brother. So anyway, back to the timeline. So he leaves his home at 6:26. He actually goes to a Shell gas station before he goes to his two sites. So he has site 1 and site 2. But just before he goes to site 1, he hits up his Shell gas station. This will be very important.
The Jeep read 58055, and at 7:01 a.m. the odometer read 58091.99. So this is actually consistent with Daniel driving approximately 37 miles from his home to the Shell gas station located at 1520 North Verado Way. Surveillance from that Shell station shows that Daniel was there putting gas in his Jeep between 7 and 7:03 in the morning on the day he went missing.
Daniel's father.
So this is where there's already it starts to get a little weird. So Daniel's father had seen, apparently there is a surveillance footage of Daniel, because obviously gas stations have tons of surveillance. He was never given, which is weird, they never released like the surveillance footage, which is still, to me, is odd. He was only shown a grainy photo from it. And the one thing he noticed immediately was, even though he was parked at a pump, his, at least according to his father, as you can see, I have a picture of his model, his actual vehicle here on the left, and then the same kind of model on its right side. As you can see, the gas tank is on the right side. David, the father, noticed when looking at the grainy photo that his pump, the tank was faced on the opposite side of where the fuel pumps were, even though he's parked at pump 4. And then there was 2 transactions, which I don't want to get too confusing, but both, I believe, debit. But apparently he spent $383 allegedly at this spot. And there's a reason why I say allegedly, because there was 2 transactions, but I don't want to get like too confusing. But for now, according to his father, the grainy image just shows Daniel Robinson, what appears to be parked at a gas station, but the tank and the pump are on opposite sides. So keep that in mind.
Father claimed in a show that he saw a screenshot of the surveillance footage, and it showed that even though he was parked at pump 4, his gas tank was on the opposite side of the pump. He only spent $3.83 there.
At 7:22 a.m., the odometer read 58,093.24. That's also consistent with Daniel driving about 1.25 miles from the Shell station to a work site on Verrado Way South, where he took photos of his work logs, photos that were later found in his phone and time-stamped 7:10 a.m. So
Daniel continues on to another location off Sun Valley Park.
Okay, so so he leaves from his home. Before he gets to job site 1, he hits up a gas station, allegedly spends $3.83 or $10, but I don't want to get too confusing. Either way, they're both kind of weird. I mean, $10 is a little bit more explainable, but the $3.83 is weird. It's like, is that like a candy bar or something? Anyway, so he spends about, I think, somewhere around a half hour, a little bit more, at the first job site. Actually, I think it's a little bit longer than that, because I think he gets around there about a little after 7, and then he's going to leave up north to the second job site. Now, about halfway there, or 3/4 of the way there, I guess, I haven't calculated the exact distance, but and you can see here, and I know it's really small, but it'll be blown up later. As you can see, this is actual phone logs of his phone from that day he went missing. As you can see, there's a name called Steve Matrix. Now, if you guys remember, I told you how he allegedly got hired on. He met this guy named Steven, or Steve, who is allegedly the boss's son. And he gets a call at 8:33 a.m., and it looks like he missed the call, and he pulls over and then calls him back, from what it looks like here. But either way, he gets a call before he makes it to job site 2. This is huge because it lines up with the odometer that we kind of see with the when I pull up Stephanie Harlow's log and everything.
At 8:35 a.m.,
Good to see you, Alicia.
the odometer read 58,112.50. Now that's a difference of about 19.26 miles, according to Google Maps. The distance between that first work site and then the second work site, the one where he went missing from, that's 22.9 miles. And at 9 a.m., when Daniel would have been getting to the second work site, the odometer read 58,129.90. So it's unclear as to where Daniel went or what he did between.
So notice she's even like, wait, there's more miles than necessary if he's just going from site 1 to site 2. And there's a reason for that. So again, try not to worry too much about the actual odometer data. Again, that is a video for another live for another time. But just more of the timestamps. And notice the 8:35 a.m. With the odometer being clocked in, because that is when he would start up his car again. Because remember, he had to pull over to the side and take this call from the boss's son. That's the boss. That's work. So important call. Now, so again, continue on with scenario A. He now allegedly is continuing on, even though we just heard Stephanie herself say, like, hey, wait a minute, these miles between, point A and point B on these odometers don't quite make sense. There's way more miles than there should be.
Site, the odometer read 58,129.90. So it's unclear as to where Daniel went or what he did between.
Oh, no worries, Alicia.
There, he's scheduled to meet pump technician Ken Elliott, who, according to Buckeye Police, would become the last person to see Daniel Robinson alive.
My name is Ken Elliott. I'm a pump technician for Weber Water Resources. On the morning of June 23rd, we arrived at the job site at 9:30. And I walked over to Daniel's Jeep to introduce myself. We spoke about a few technical aspects of the job and where we were at on the development phase of this well.
And I agree. Sorry not to get sidetracked, but yes, it could have been a pop that he bought, because I think there was a cup, like a styrofoam cup that you could get at a Shell gas. I'm not sure if it had like a Shell gas station logo on it. We could look at that. But yeah, 383. No, I love the other theory about he could have been getting gas for a separate, a portable gas tank. But he didn't have any of those on his vehicle. So do keep that in mind, even though that's not a bad theory or thought anyway. So here's Ken, a coworker who is, in a way, could be suspicious because he's saying he sees Daniel come at 9 a.m. And, their job is to test his water levels and get soil samples. And, here's his statement here.
It was raining fairly hard at that point. I had asked him whether or not he wanted to just hang tight and let this storm cell pass overhead before we started so we wouldn't get all of our paperwork wet. This is where things started to become odd. When I looked up, Daniel was staring off into the desert. He had a very, very distant look in his eyes. That's when he got in his Jeep and left.
So notice the whole scenario A kind of plays into the whole mental health. He met this girl, but she's kind of rejected him, and he was kind of being a little bit weird. But it's happened to guys. And then obviously there's some coworkers and friends kind of saying, hey, the last time I saw him, he was kind of acting different and had some weird, strange conversations. So then we have this Ken guy, this coworker, who says it sees him arrive at 9 a.m., which he'll change his timeline here in a minute, and say, yeah, Daniel just wasn't acting right, was acting kind of different in distance, was kind of staring off, and apparently mentioned something about, hey, we should go to Phoenix and go take a nap or something like that. And, very strange, if true. But it does all kind of play into this mental health, that I think they, law enforcement kind of wants you to lean in towards.
Must have been around 2:30. The principal of the firm called me. They had not heard from Daniel yet. I hopped in my work truck. The only tracks were Daniel's because the storms had washed all the dirt roads clear.
So notice he just said the heavy rain just washed all the roads clear, yet he could see his tracks, which I could argue both sides, because it would kind of wash stuff away depending on how heavy this rain was allegedly, and if this road is kind of like it gets kind of muddy, then yes, it would leave tracks. So I could see that, playing devil's advocate. But then there's a thing where some people claim that there wasn't rain that day, or at least that morning.
When I got to that intersection, my heart sank because Daniel's tracks didn't make a left and head east towards the home. They made a right-hand turn and headed west, out in the desert. And I thought, he's so far out in front of me, he could be anywhere.
Oh, I appreciate that, Buckeye Klee fan. God bless, man. So his timeline changed. So he originally said that Daniel arrived at 9 a.m. and left at 9:15 approximately. So he was only there for 15 minutes. Then he, and it's in the police report, then he later was, interviewed for a second time, and he changed his timeline from, instead of him arriving at 9 a.m., he arrived at 9:30 and then left at 9:45. Now, again, it could just be, an accident. I'm sure it's happened before. But it is kind of a big difference from 9 to 9:30. But again, it's not, huge, but still it's different because, he definitely has changed his timeline. So as you can see there, that's the timelines he changed from his first interview, from his second. So a little odd.
At around 9:45 a.m. on June 23rd, 2021, Daniel Robinson left the job site in his Jeep Renegade and drove west into the Arizona desert. Throughout the day, Daniel's co-workers, family, and friends attempted to reach him, but while his phone initially rang, he did not answer any calls or respond to texts. By the evening, concern had grown significantly, and at 7:04 p.m., Daniel's father, David Robinson, reported him missing to the Buckeye Police Department. David explained that his son had left the job site earlier that morning under unusual circumstances and had not been heard from since. The Buckeye Police Department initiated their investigation by contacting Daniel's workplace and conducting a search along Sun Valley Parkway near his last known location. After several days with no significant leads, David Robinson arrived in Arizona to begin his own relentless search for his son, driven by a determination to find answers.
Now, I wouldn't say he did anything to Daniel, but there could be something bigger on maybe a cover-up, and that's where we'd have to get into a second and third live, which then, it'd be great to maybe even have Carolyn, even if she's just in chat, kind of go over, because remember, if you caught the first part, part of their job is, they're out there, they're having this, they're trying to get new housing development, and to approve that, they've got to have these guys approve of water levels that are, obviously sustained for 100 years for this particular housing development. And, what if there's something in the water levels or soil that Daniel found that, would conflict, and he didn't like that, and he brought it to the boss. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked, because trust me, we're going to get into actual data that's going to flip everything on its head. I promise you guys, you'll want to stay for this, because, this isn't just theories and speculation. This is data. It's in the report, and it is like, holy shit, like mind-blowing. So, of course, before we get to all that, we need to go to, what happened after he disappeared, the official narrative and stuff. So obviously they're out
between that
for him.
First work site and then the second work site, the one where he went missing from, that's 22.9 miles. And at 9 a.m., when Daniel would have been getting to the second work site, the odometer read 58,129.90. So it's unclear.
I think this is David in the chat, if I'm not wrong. Honored to have you in here, and my prayers for you and your family and your son. Oh, interesting. His bank statement doesn't agree. Oh, yeah, I have so many questions. So we do have his father. Yeah, I'm 90% sure, unless that's a sock account, but I don't think it is. That's his father. So hopefully, again, I'm just trying to bring awareness, and, I'm kind of going the mile IQ data. In my opinion, I think that's important data. I don't know, I've seen some of your lives, but, I don't know how you feel on that stuff. But again, I'm trying to kind of go with the scenario A with just the odometer and the timelines that we had originally, and then kind of flip that on its head when we go into the mile IQ, because I think it just flips everything on its head, in my opinion. So, all right. So continuing on, but it's an honor to have you in here, and man, what a strong guy out there searching every year. I've seen some of the highlights of how much he's done for, searching for his son. And wow.
As to where Daniel went or what he did between leaving the South Verado Way worksite and arriving at the Sun Valley Parkway and Cactus Road worksite, because that is an additional 17.4 miles that he probably, didn't have to drive.
So again, this is going back to that where she's like looking at the mileage and being like, hey, there's a lot more mileage than, from this just point A to point B. And again, that would just be another live where we dig into the miles. That's why I'm like, trying you guys not to focus on the miles this time around and just the timeline right now.
But at 9:06 a.m., the odometer still read 58,129.90, and that did not change until 12:54 p.m., when an odometer reading showed mileage of 58,153.51. The difference in distance between the final two odometer readings is approximately 23.6 miles, with 4 hours between readings. And since the area...
And that's a lot of miles. Obviously, his vehicle is only found 4 miles away. The drive, I think, is approximately... I heard someone say 4 hours. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. I don't know if they just mixed up the 4 miles away. Maybe, I'm sure David would probably know from site 2 to where he was found. But it was only 4 miles away. But yet his vehicle logged in, we're looking at, if I just rounded up, 30, so 24 miles that he was allegedly driving in the desert for. And then eventually just before 1 p.m., he ends up in this ditch. Now, of course... his father hadn't known that yet because he's just learned of his father's disappearance.
That Daniel's Jeep was found in was only about 4 miles away from the Sun Valley Parkway site. It's once again unclear where Daniel went between leaving that site around 9:30, 9:45 a.m. and then ending up in the ravine probably around that 1 p.m. time.
So now we get into search and discovery, and then once we go over that, we'll get into the Mile IQ app, which to me flips everything on its head.
The search for Daniel Robinson involved a coordinated effort over several weeks. Civil Air Patrol aircraft scanned the desert from above, while teams in off-road vehicles and volunteers on foot covered miles of search zones. The Phoenix Firebird helicopter flew low over ravines and washes, guided by Ken Elliott's account. Maps of the operation detail the extensive area searched. Despite these efforts, I
meant to pause that. Try not to interrupt too much. So this is where he allegedly took a turn that his vehicle would be kind of found here. But on this grid, from what I understand, is kind of like where their search pattern was from the air, from what I understand. I could be wrong. If David's still in here, he could correct me. But I've seen this pop up a lot. I think this is actually in the police report showing where they've flown. Now, I could argue both sides. Yes, I know helicopters, planes, whatever, can easily miss something, but again, it's usually they're kind of looking for a person or a body. Again, you have this big blue Jeep. Now, yeah, it is sitting in a ravine, but you would think that, it's not impossible, but you would think they would see it. And then you have the rancher story, which then that really kind of flips everything on its head.
Despite these efforts, no trace of Daniel Robinson would be uncovered until almost a month later, where a discovery in the desert altered the course of the investigation. On July 19th, 26 days after Daniel disappeared, a cattle rancher and his partner were working just 2 miles south of where Daniel's Jeep had turned into the desert. While checking their herd and repairing fence lines, they made an unexpected discovery. Daniel Robinson's Jeep Renegade lying on its side in a ravine.
So one thing I will say, just for the little experience I had without going out searching with Aiden Clune, especially Aiden Clune's case, because where he went missing, even though it's kind of in the mountains, it's kind of part in with property owned by ranchers. And every time that we'd go out searching, not every time, but most of the time, we would run into them. At least, again, not every day, but if we were out there for a few days on the search, yeah, we would see them out there. They are definitely out there doing their things, fixing fences, their cattle, whatever. So, they're usually pretty aware of, what's going on the property. And again, this cattle rancher, we're going to learn here, doesn't believe that this car was out there the entire time.
The pair immediately contacted the Buckeye Police Department, marking a significant turn in the search for Daniel.
Oh, I don't know if they had that technology.
I called Buckeye.
Actually, I'd say they probably would. So what they would use is they would fly the helicopter, and if they did what we do with the drones where we're snapping photos, then you run all those photos. I'm sure you could probably do it with video as well. And then you tell it to look for a specific color. And, then of course, these programs are trained to kind of, as it's starting to see all the terrain that it's looking at, it starts to know what's normal, what's the normal colors, your browns, your greens, and then anything sticking out like, a big blue Jeep, if they would have done like the drone thing like that we do now for searching, there's no way in hell they would have missed this thing. Now, again, I'm not saying that's what they did, but it's too bad if, let's just say, to argue both sides, if it was out there the entire time, it's a shame they didn't have that. I know that technology was there, but would they have utilized that? Were they even photographing or videoing while they're flying, or if they just looking over, scouting?
And they said, "What's the license plate number?" And I give them the license plate number. And they said, "Yeah, that's the one we're looking for." I said, "Yeah, I know. I've seen it on the news." So I said, "Okay, let us call you right back." Okay. They called me right back a couple minutes later, talked to the detective, and the detective says, "Yeah, that's the one we're looking for." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I'm here." I said, "There's no way for you to find me. Like, I can't give you directions here. I said, but I'll send my guy up to the parkway, and I'll meet you."
Now, this is the cattle rancher speaking, for anybody that doesn't know who's speaking. And he's, like I said, he says some interesting things, and then was told something disturbing as well. Well, I don't know if disturbing is the right word, because I can kind of look at it on both ways.
On the parkway, you can bring him. He can bring you down. I said, "Okay, I need you to do something for me if you could." He said, "Can you not alert the media or his family or anyone that you found the Jeep?"
Now, I'm okay. Personally, after covering true crime, now it doesn't make me an expert in anything. I understand this statement by Buckeye, but after this phone call, it should have been then Buckeye's priority to contact David for this. I can understand them telling him not to, go to the media or anything like that, because obviously you just found what could be potentially a crime scene. And if you start alerting media and everything, people start showing up and they could destroy, crime scene detail. If it was a foul play, they could destroy evidence coming out there. Right. So I understand that part totally. I don't understand why they just couldn't tell David and explain, hey, you know what? Because they're going to wait 24 hours before, I think, or even longer before they even tell him about the vehicle. And that, I don't understand.
Following that request by the Buckeye Police Department, the rancher met with detectives and guided them to the ravine where Daniel's Jeep was located. The rancher also noted that he didn't believe the vehicle had been there the entire time Daniel had been missing, suggesting it had only appeared in the days leading up to its discovery.
So when they tell me that, "Oh, we searched this area, we searched it, we didn't see it," well, no, you probably didn't, because it wasn't there. I'll bet whatever you want to bet that thing was not there.
And that's coming from the cattle rancher saying, like, look, we would have seen that thing, but we didn't see it.
So how often are you in that area specifically? Every day, every week.
So he's saying, like, if I'm not there every day, I'm out there, I'm out in that area every week. And remember, it was 20 some odd days, something like that, about 3 weeks before they found his vehicle. Almost a month.
As you heard from the rancher, the Jeep wasn't in the ravine in the days prior to its discovery.
Yeah.
Something police themselves implied when telling him they searched that area before. Located just 2 miles from the turn Daniel was last known taking, the Jeep's position matched his anticipated path. Once more, this same area had been included in a prior search conducted by law enforcement, Civil Air Patrol, and the Phoenix Firebird helicopter. The vehicle's discovery introduced a series of inconsistencies, launching a wider investigation into Daniel Robinson's mysterious disappearance. It was only the beginning.
Hey, Sassy, good to see you. Okay, so now we'll go into the wreckage a little bit, and then we're about 15 minutes away, maybe a little less than that, before we get into scenario B and the Mile IQ, and that's where it's going to flip everything on its head.
Police Detective Larry Biffin and several other officers arrived on scene at around 11 a.m. to examine the Jeep. The vehicle lay on its passenger side, its exterior strangely clean given the recent rainfall and the harsh desert environment. The damage included a shattered driver's window, a windshield smashed in 2 places, and deployed airbags. Beneath the Jeep, a roof panel had a boot stuck between it and the
This is, again, I said, we'll have to do multiple lives on this because there's just so much red flags everywhere, and just there's only so much time to cover. So again, I just want to get to the basics and blow you away with the Mile IQ, and then as we dive more into this, there's many red flags about the boot. Apparently, the detective grabbed the boot. No crime scene texts come out, which I just mind-boggling. And he just put the boot up by his other clothing, which we'll show here in a second.
frame. Nearby on a hillside, investigators found another boot, a shirt, a reflective vest with the Matrix logo, a pair of mismatched socks and jeans turned inside out. Daniel's wallet was in the pocket of those jeans. Inside the Jeep, police recovered Daniel's cell phone, car keys, a backpack containing his work laptop and documents, several bags of soil samples, a hard hat, multiple unopened water bottles, and other personal belongings.
So yeah, I don't know. Somebody said that you could see a cup somewhere. I don't know if that's it or maybe it's somewhere in this photo. Maybe explaining that 383 charge. So one thing to point out, because this will come very important later, I had to flip it, but this is a picture of inside the vehicle, and let me tell me what you guys see. I'll put up an example. So we're looking at the gear shift, his vehicle as it was found on the right, and a example, the same model, on the left. Now you can see top to bottom, park, rear, neutral, drive. So park at the top, drive at the bottom. It's got the 4-wheel, I think, buttons up here and stuff. But the main thing, do you guys notice, and I really made sure, because I know sometimes photos, if they're taken at a certain angle, can make things look like they're in a position that they're not. But what do you guys notice about the position of what this is in? Out of the 4 it could be in, what do you guys think this gear shift is in? Let me know in chat. But I know it's no. Well, this one's in park. And you can tell, see how it's how the rubber and the stitching's got bent, but notice the stitching on this is more firm as it is. Yes, it is in drive, right? That's very important for later, but just a little foreshadowing. Yes, drive.
Investigators spent 18 hours at the ravine. They checked for any other signs of Daniel, collected his clothes in bags marked for safekeeping, and had his Jeep towed to the impound lot for further processing. It's important to note that despite the extended period spent on scene, no forensics were completed during that time.
What a shame. How many times have we seen this? Where
24.
They just don't do what they need to do from the beginning, and now valuable evidence is likely has disappeared or ruined, due to negligence from law enforcement.
Hours after Daniel's Jeep Renegade was
Such a
found
shame.
overturned in a ravine, Detective Larry Biffin contacted David Robinson.
Now, I know when you see that with it being a drive would make sense. Like if you, let's just say in the scenario A, if he did drive into the ravine, right, and he crashed, right, obviously if he's, coming to or whatever, and obviously that vehicle is not drivable anymore, he's not going to be running the gear shift. But there's an important reason why I mentioned that being a drive. Because obviously with scenario A, that would make sense it being in drive, right? Because he just drove in allegedly into this ravine and crashed, right? But trust me, it will circle back to that.
To inform him of the discovery. While meeting with David and taking him to the police impound lot to view the vehicle, the detective stated that they plan to analyze Daniel's cell phone and the Jeep's event data recorder, also known as a vehicle's black box, in hopes of uncovering any clues about what had happened or where Daniel may have gone. The EDR data, retrieved on July 21st, revealed key details about a crash. At the moment of airbag deployment, the vehicle was traveling approximately 30 miles per hour. More notably, after the airbags deployed, the Jeep's ignition button was pressed over 40 times.
And this is why I bring this up, is the 40-plus ignition attempts with that vehicle. It's a push to start. There's no key. And, well, just give you a little details now, but we'll circle back to this because we want to get to scenario B. But to attempt to restart the car, and again, I'm no car expert, so I'm just getting details of people that know more than me. And if anybody in the chat knows, has experience with vehicles, that can chime in, let me know. But what I understand, the two things to start this vehicle is, one, it needs to be in drive, and two, you need to press on the brake pedal. And then you hit the start button. So, again, if it was Daniel and he just crashed, right, why is he pressing the restart 40-plus times when clearly it's in drive? You would think, now you could argue, well, yeah, he just got in a crash. He's not all there, But again, I think it's important as we circle back into the foul play part of it.
Suggesting multiple attempts to restart the vehicle. Additionally, the odometer reading at the time of the crash was recorded at 58,154 miles. All three of these details are key elements moving forward. Keep that in mind as we continue our investigation.
Exactly, Omi. It wouldn't register. That's the other big thing. From what I understand, people have been doing a lot of research. That's the other key thing. So even if he was like dazed and stuff, from what at least some people have been telling me, and again, they could be wrong, but apparently they put their information out there on like Reddit and some forums and came back saying, yeah, this is, it should only register, these ignition attempts if it's, put in park, the brake pad, brake pad, and then you're pushing the button, and then it should register those. So here's a look just before the ravine that it's found in. And I wanted to show this, and again, this is something else we'll circle back to, but this is kind of foreshadowing because, allegedly the car got up to 30-plus miles before it went into this ravine. And as somebody who's driven these roads quite a bit, especially when I was out searching for Aiden and Dylan rounds, we go through these roads a lot, and you encounter ruts. And this is exactly what he's driving through, is these rutted dirt roads. They're really not even real roads, right? Just used by the ranchers and, ATVs and stuff like that. Notice this guy's got, he certainly doesn't have he's not driving a, low sedan in there. But at the same time, he doesn't have this big truck, high lifted truck. And notice, even with, the kind of a medium SUV that he's got, notice how fast or slow he's going. because if not, you're gonna like high center somewhere or just mess up your vehicle in so many ways, because you are just going with how the road is developing, right? With these ruts. For those that are familiar with those kind of roads, but you're kind of grounded with what you got there. It isn't where you can just gun it, unless again, like you've got a lift or all-terrain vehicle that is designed for these kind of roads. Yeah.
And instead centered the investigation around Daniel's mental health. They focused on his sudden departure from the job site.
Don't worry, Stacy. We're going through
highlighting
all that
statements
right
from
now.
friends and family who had noticed a shift in his behavior in the days before he disappeared. Day, Buckeye police remained at the scene where Daniel's Jeep was found. They photographed it. They cataloged what they...
Okay, we're about 5 to 10 minutes into where we get to scenario B, and I promise you guys this is where we're going to start blowing some minds.
They saw. They towed the vehicle out of the ravine. But what they didn't do is investigate. No fingerprint testing, no DNA collection, no analysis of the boots, the clothing, or the interior. Not even a basic forensic sweep of the scene. This was the vehicle of a missing person, found in a remote ravine, airbags deployed, personal items scattered uphill, and a witness saying it hadn't been there days before. Yet police never treated it as a potential crime scene. So why ask the rancher to stay quiet? And why wait more than 24 hours to notify Daniel's father? According to both the rancher and Buckeye PD's
take on these missing person cases.
So then they hire Jeff McGrath, this guy here. He's a PI, and he specializes in kind of vehicle reconstruction and stuff like that, accident stuff. And so they hired him, and he found out some very, some major red flags with the vehicle, which, included the 40 ignition starts, the time it was traveling, and also an inconsistency with the odometer that was read at 12:54, and then what was, when he got it to his shop, it had 11 additional miles.
What was it about Daniel's disappearance and case that motivated you to take it on?
Well, what it was I wasn't familiar with the case when I received the call. So I looked into it, and I agreed to meet with Mr. Robinson. And when I did, he showed me one photograph that was turned over to him by the Buckeye police. And from the minute I saw that photograph, I knew that he needed at least a vehicle accident expert in his corner to wade through this. And that's when I decided to take it, and my team and I jumped on it.
As part of his initial investigation, Jeff returned to the ravine where the Jeep had been found. His team fanned out through the surrounding area, searching on foot. On July 31st, they found something unexpected, a human skull, fully intact, lying in a nearby wash a few hundred feet away from the ravine. It wasn't Daniel's, but it confirmed what we already suspected. The area hadn't been searched thoroughly, and soon after, that was proven again. One of Daniel's socks was found, this time a few miles away, lying on the dirt road coming from the second well site.
And that was weird. And here's the video, I guess, after he had found it. And if you remember, when they initially, around the wreckage, a lot of his clothing was kind of found, and it was almost, I think most of it, I don't know if all of it was inside out. I think his pants and maybe shirt was inside out. Some theorize that, let's say if he was in that accident, I guess when the airbags deploy, sometimes they can release some hot gas, and, it could have been him jumping out. And but again, if that happened, then again, why would he go back in there and try to start it 40 times if he's already now derobed? Not to say he couldn't, but anyway, so he finds a sock, and then this happens.
One of my investigators and I were out here looking just around the desert for anything that would lead us to Daniel, and I saw this pallet over here that looked fairly new. Well, it was brand new, as a matter of fact. Didn't have any water damage to it. just curious about this pallet. And as I parked here,
Yes.
we saw something in that creosote bush right there. And I came over to look at it. And right here at the bottom was a faded, sun faded. It was originally a black Nike sock, athletic sock.
Now, for any of those who don't know, any clothing that's out in the desert, probably anywhere, especially in the desert, and where the sun's beating on it, it'll fade it brown. But then he noticed, because again, remember, he found 2 socks, but one of them, they were mismatched, right? So then he finds this sock, which is much further away and closer to where, that one witness kind of last saw him, or at least where he was allegedly heading.
And it's obviously had been here a couple of months because the sun faded up the top side. But once we collected it and I compared it to the clothes that the Buckeye police recovered, it was one of Daniel's matching socks.
So it was a match to one of the 2 unmatching socks. So now you have a match. So it's believed to be his. This is where obviously forensics would have been great, because then I'm sure you could test, because I'm sure feet sweat, I'm sure there's probably, DNA in that.
On August 4th, Jeff McGrath arrived at the Buckeye Police impound lot.
Get the vehicle, they already turned it over to me, get it out of their compound, take it to where he suggested where it needed to go, and just for storage and take care of it so you can do.
And that is, for anybody who doesn't know, that is David Robinson. That is Daniel Robinson's son, who is a soldier. He has been fighting for his son. He was even in the chat earlier. I'm not sure if he's still here. I'm sure he's got a lot on his plate, but we are honored to have him in here and do whatever we can to help, spread awareness. But we're about to get into scenario B. I know I keep mentioning that, but I'm telling you guys, it'd be worth the wait.
His investigation, and I had to pay for that. But then
Together, how do you think the car got there?
Well, I think the car got there by somebody was still driving the vehicle after the airbags came out.
So he kind of thinks that it was crashed once before by somebody else besides Daniel, and maybe had Daniel with him. And then it was placed there after.
And if it was dumped intentionally, and that's not possible in the area where the vehicle, the report says the vehicle was traveling about 30 miles an hour for 5 seconds prior to its final rest, or airbag deployment, I should say. And that's not possible in the area where the vehicle was found.
And like I said, that's why I showed you guys a little bit of that clip, which is just before the ravine that the car was found in. And I'll play it again a little bit later. But again, as someone who has driven those with a medium SUV, with my RAV4, it's, again, unless you got a huge lift on your truck, those ruts, even with 4-wheel drive, I'm not going to say it's not possible, because I haven't been to that exact site, not to play devil's advocate, but again, knowing how those kind of roads work, I mean, you kind of have to work with what you got. And again, they're not really roads,
So piecing that information together, how do you think the car got there?
Well, I think the car got there by somebody was still driving the vehicle after the airbags came out. And if it was dumped intentionally, or somebody was joyriding, and that's where it ended up, and once it got there, you couldn't move it out from there. It tipped to its side. Or Daniel was in it. We don't have any proof to say that he wasn't, but we also don't have anything to say that he was in it.
But his cell phone, his wallet, his keys, all still left with the car.
Soon after Jeff inspected the Jeep, the infotainment data came in. It contained a list of time logs and matching odometer readings from 6:26 that morning to 12:54 in the afternoon.
Now, these are really important. We're not going to get too deep in, and keep in mind, the mileage, we're not going to really worry about again. except for this last mileage, we'll, kind of touch on a little bit. But the timestamps obviously are really big as well.
The last entry caught Jeff's attention. The mileage aligned with the recorded crash data, minus a small rounding difference. Jeff believed that 12:54 p.m. marked the moment of impact, roughly 4 hours after Daniel met Ken at the second well site.
We have also downloaded the infotainment system, which is the Uconnect that the phone connects into. And that is how we were able to confirm the time and date that the airbags deployed. And that comes out to be about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on June 23rd. He went missing anywhere from 9:15 to 9:45 in the morning. And the Uconnect tells us that the airbags blew at about 1 p.m. So there's a time gap there.
Although Jeff McGrath pointed to the 12:54 p.m. infotainment entry as the time of the crash, Buckeye PD never publicly supported that conclusion. The police report does hint at that timestamp being significant, possibly even the crash time, but it stops short of making that claim directly. That distinction is critical as the case unfolds. Jeff delivered his full report to the Buckeye police, but their priority wasn't discovering what really happened. It was protecting what they'd already concluded.
I have turned all of my information over to the Buckeye police detectives because I wanted them to step up their investigation. Unfortunately, when I went to go out and process the vehicle the first time when it was still in Buckeye's possession,
The first accident occurred.
From your analysis from the crash report, it gives you, I guess, information that the vehicle had a collision at around 1 p.m. on the afternoon of Wednesday, June 23rd.
correct.
Right.
Is that correct?
That was airbag deployment. That was the airbag deployment collision. That mileage from the
Airbag
entertainment system in the
deployment, okay.
vehicle matches the black box mileage. We correlate those two to each other. It gives us a time in UTC. We do subtract the hours. I think it was -7 at the time, which puts it at about approximately 1 p.m.
Thank you, Elise Fairbanks, for the membership. God bless. Oh, Miss Stewie. Oh, the water sustain. Yeah, that is. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. That is something that we will definitely touch on a part 2 or part 3. Believe me, there is some evidence there that would suggest there's some, there could be some potential motives there. Definitely.
So now we have a gap
we
from
have,
9:30 in the morning till 1 p.m.
The mileage match at 12:54 p.m. seemed like a solid lead, but once you understand how the infotainment system actually logs data, you'll see why Jeff's conclusion was wrong, and why what's in that system is the most important piece of evidence in this case. Up until now, you've seen a pattern: questionable decisions, overlooked clues, and unexplained inconsistencies surrounding. What most drivers don't realize is that these systems also record data in the background, data like ignition times and mileage. In Daniel Robinson's Jeep Renegade, that background data revealed something critical. As we showed earlier, the system logged multiple events on the day Daniel went missing. Private investigator Jeff McGrath believed the final log, at 12:54 p.m., was the crash, because the mileage matched the crash report.
Now, this is where he thinks, and we believe they may have gotten it wrong. Now, they kind of make it seem like all these times, or at least this last time, is a stop time. And that's when it recorded this mileage, right? This 58,154. But then, if you look at it that way, does it work with this infotainment that it's a stop time, or is it only specifically when you stop? Because when you look at this time, that morning at 6:26, sorry, something in my throat, that's when he left. So clearly that's not a stop time. And if you think about it, whenever if anything's going to log miles is when you kick on your vehicle, especially electric, and that's when, it's going to log those miles. So keep that in mind, because they kind of make it seem like that's the stop time of when the miles got logged. But we're going to show where it kind of proves that this might have been a start time, because when he brought that back, the PI, it had the 154. Remember, the infotainment, when he pulled it, had the 154, but when he plugged in the battery to the vehicle, it had an 11 additional miles on it. So it had, instead of 154, I think it was like 165 approximately. Keep that in mind.
Not crashed, and it had traveled 24 miles since its last recorded start at 9:06 a.m. The 58,154 miles shown matches the crash data, because the vehicle was turned on after the accident that deployed the airbags. Understanding this clears up a lot of the discrepancies we've seen so far. Remember those 40-plus attempts?
Okay. So again, just like I said, if we were to believe that this is a stop time, and when it's recording the odometer, then, you've got to think, well, then all of these are stop times, or maybe it works with start and stop, but then when you do that, it doesn't quite line up either. So it's kind of funky in that way. But we know clearly the 6:20 a.m. is a start time when it logged in these miles. And this will make more sense of where we're trying to go with here. All right, so now let's get into scenario B. And I promise you guys, I'm sorry it's already taken an hour to get to this point, but I promise you guys, this is where it's going to flip everything on its head if you have not heard about the mile IQ data. I promise you guys. Hit that like button if you haven't. Again, we had David in here for a bit. I'm sure he's busy, but anyway, so now let's get into scenario B. And we'll kind of mix scenario A and B and show,
at 6:26 a.m.
and show how they kind of line up for the first part, and then where things get flipped on its head. But I promise you guys, this is worth the wait. It was June 23rd and July 19th when they found it. 23 days? 22? I guess it was the 31st. Somewhere around there. So, yeah, a little over 3 weeks.
Odometer in the Jeep read 58,055. And at 7:01 a.m., the odometer read 58,091.99. So this is actually consistent with Daniel driving approximately 37 miles from his home to the Shell gas station located at 1520 North Laredo Way. Surveillance from that Shell station shows that Daniel was there putting gas in his Jeep between 7 and 7:03 in the morning on the day he went missing.
Daniel's father claimed in a show that he saw a screenshot of the surveillance footage, and it showed that even though he was parked at pump 4, his gas tank was on the opposite side of the pump. He only spent $3.83 there.
At 7:22 a.m., the odometer read 58,093.24. That's also consistent with Daniel driving about 1.25 miles from the Shell station to a work site on Verado Way South, where he took photos of his work logs, photos that were later found in his phone and time-stamped 7:10 a.m.
Now, I want to get too sidetracked, but kind of foreshadowing a future live show. Hopefully I pronounced this wrong. Pronounce this right. Lithology logs, which is the logs that Daniel make up. These are like the water and soil level, soil samples and stuff like that. I'm sure on our sequence, Carolyn in the chat could explain a lot better. But again, if we were to kind of hint at a possible motive, because remember, this whole thing is they're trying to build, new housing development, and they've got to show that there's enough water there for 100 years, and the soil's okay. And of course, if there's something he found that they didn't like, but maybe they were close, and maybe they were trying to push some numbers that they just couldn't do, and Daniel didn't feel comfortable with it, could show some motive.
So
Daniel continues on to another location off Sun.
So back to scenario B. I mean, scenario B, which we start out with scenario A. I mean, they're both the same scenario, but you'll see where things flip here.
Valley Parkway.
This is where everything kind of changes here.
At 8:35 a.m., the odometer read 58,112.50.
So remember, this 8:35 is a huge timeline because a timestamp. As 8:33, he gets a call as he's heading from job site 1 to job site 2. He's about, it looks like 3/4 of the way there. I don't know if it's halfway or 3/4, somewhere in between there. And he gets a call from the boss's son, Steven. And so he pulls over.
Now that's a difference of about 19.26 miles, according to Google Maps. The distance between that first work site and then the second work site, the one where he went missing from, that's 22.9 miles. And at 9 a.m., when Daniel would have been getting to the second work site, the odometer read 58,129.90. So it's unclear as to where Daniel went or what he did between.
So again, there's her even saying like, hey, I'm looking at this mileage and where he's supposedly going from point A to point B for each stop. And she's even saying like, wow, there's more mileage on here than, if he's just going from this spot to this spot. And this is where things kind of get flipped on its head.
Daniel Robinson had an app on his phone called the Mile IQ, which is an automatic mileage tracking app for individuals and businesses to easily log drives for tax deductions, expense reports, or reimbursements. The app runs in the background of a smartphone and uses GPS to automatically record every trip.
So that's huge. Again, keep in mind, he had this. This is in the report. I'll read it because this is huge. Once, if you have not heard this. So during the course of investigation, I had made efforts to review and reanalyze data from new information and potentially missed information. On or about 8/15/2022, holy hell. So this is over a year after he went missing, right? So keep that in mind, for one. I utilized an advanced feature with decoding, which can potentially carve location data from other areas of device memory storage. I found on June 23rd, the day he went missing, and prior to this day, Daniel's cell phone was using an application called Mile IQ Mileage Tracker. And as I just read before, that is an app used, especially if people are driving around a lot. They can use that for tax, reimbursement, and many different things. And that app can just kind of run in the background. I have something similar for my insurance company. Before I had a little device, but now I have just an app from State Farm where it's basically kind of the same thing, where it just logs trip start to stop, right? Start to stop. And it literally logs them in as trips for each day. It'll say trip 1, 2, 3, depending on how many times you drove that day. So kind of familiar with this, not this exact app, but how it works, because State Farm has pretty much the same kind of thing. Did I read everything in there? So this is where, so to finish, the carved location data from this app appears to show Daniel's travels to Buckeye on June 23rd, and ultimately stops tracking on June 23rd shortly after 10 a.m. in the ravine where Daniel's Jeep and cell phone were eventually located on July 19th. Let me read that again. This app, which tracks GPS, it's using the same GPS that we all have in our phones. It's using that same stuff. It says that using this data, it ultimately stops tracking shortly after 10 a.m. And it's saying that it is now in the ravine, or near the ravine, at 10 a.m. So keep that in mind, because that kind of throws everything on its head, and we're just going to continue with that.
Reimbursements. The app runs in the background of a smartphone and uses GPS to automatically record every trip.
Yeah, we're going through part of that. The laptop home computer, I don't know what came up with, but yes. Oh, oops, sorry. Okay, so this is where it gets really juicy. So this is in the police report. So again, this is a year after he went missing, and they emailed David, and they talk about this. So I'm just trying to kind of paraphrase here. Charlie also explained that they only store waypoint data for 90 days due to storage costs. So the only data available was date and time stamp, start and end of trips with GPS coordinates. Those are all huge. As I reviewed these start and end locations, I found that it did not contain every spot which Daniel had stopped. Potentially, he did not stop long enough for the app to identify a stop or an end of a trip, which we'll see. But again, it throws everything on its head. While I was not able to receive specific technical details on what triggered these app events, Charlie advised me that this app is designed in a way that thinks like traffic. Ultimately, he advised that the app has to stay idle or be moving for an undetermined amount of time to record a start or stop. Then it says it logged 3 trips that day. That's it. 1, 2, 3. And for that trip, or for that day that he went missing. And this is where it really just gets wild. Oh, thank you, Geneva. God bless. I appreciate you. Oh, I will, Sensei. I will write it down. I'll find a spot to pause on. Actually, I think I just got that notification. So, again, now we're looking to where he had his phone, which is obviously using the same GPS that all our phones use. This program's using that, and it has logged 3 trips. And again, if anybody's worked with State Farm or has that insurance where you get a better deal on your insurance if you have like this app or device that you used to have to put in your car, that would do basically the same thing and connect with your phone. But yeah, and it literally logs it as trip 1, 2, 3, depending on, and again, like I just explained a minute ago. But here it gives them a start time and an end time. And then the bigger thing, or just as important, is GPS coordinates of the start and end location. This is huge. So let's look at the first trip, his first trip. Now keep in mind that this doesn't log every trip because he could have, he clearly went to the gas station and stuff like that. Apparently, as it said, that this app, I'm sure it's gotten better, but it says like if it's idle for too long or not long enough, it won't record certain trips or whatnot. But here's the first trip in this Mile IQ, and that's exactly what lines up with the official narrative. 6:26 a.m. Gives a GPS location, which is just east of his apartment building. And then an end time at 7:16, which the only thing it's missing is his stop to the gas station, but maybe because he was there, he wasn't there for long, that it just counted that whole entire trip. And so then it says his end time, because now maybe his phone's been sitting there long enough that now it's calculated, okay, this is a stop point, which would be the site 1. Cell service was great, from what I understand. So keep that in mind as well. Because I know that's a great question, Criminal Man, because as someone who's been out in the boonies, sometimes you if you have Verizon, it's a T-Mobile tower or vice versa, or there's no towers. But usually there's a tower out in most of these boonies. But yeah, apparently out here, great service. But anyway, continuing on. So it logs his first trip, and it matches right up with scenario A. This is why it's important. This isn't like data that just might have accidentally came from another day, right? It matches with part of scenario A's timeline. And so it shows him going from the home to the site 1. Again, he did stop at that Shell gas station, which is I think like a mile away from the site 1, but he was only there for just a little bit of time, so maybe it just thought it was all one trip till he got to site 1, where he spent about let's see, we got there about 7:16, around 7 a.m. ish. Or well, no, he got to this gas station, so I think he got there around 7:16, 7:15. And then he was there for about an hour. So keep that in mind as well. But if you look at our data that we had, that lines up with our first trip. So again, that's why I kind of showed this and the odometer. And then we get into trip number 2, which is where now he's leaving the first site and now going to the second site. But this is where we now have a big issue. So even though it says 7:22 and he's at site 1, he leaves at about 8:15, 8:16. So keep that in mind. So there should be kind of a timestamp, but keep in mind this is kind of when it's recording the odometer readings. So Daniel leaves at about 8:16 a.m. He starts heading up to the second well site. So it's just up north. Actually, northwest from his location on site 1. And then this is where, again, if you start adding up all those mileage, they kind of get a little varied. But remember, as he's heading there, he gets the phone call from the boss at 8:33. So at 8:16 he left. So this is where it just has the start and end time. Remember, it doesn't have a lot, but what it has is huge. So it says trip number 2, start time, start location is the GPS location of site 1. And the end location, this is important because this is where things start to flip from scenario A to scenario B, the difference between the two. Where his end location at 9:05 a.m. is going to be at a Shell gas station. And here's the address, and I'll show it on the screen as well. But that is south of his location. And this even lines up with where he would actually go 3/4 of the way northwest and be up on that road and then get that call at 8:35. So keep in mind, this is halfway into his trip where he gets the call from the boss. And then it's kind of a speculation. Did the boss say like, hey, you need to come back to the office or something? Or was there something more nefarious that we don't know? But then as you read what happened in trip 2 is even more exciting and disturbing. As it's recording this trip 2, as you can see here in the police report, it says this is consistent with turn-by-turn audio recordings decoded by Cellbrite. And I'm sure, those have been following true crime. We've, especially with Murdoch case and all these newer cases, Cellubrite, is that program they use to break down phone data, which is amazing. So, but they have audio recordings. I'm assuming from the Infotainment Center. I could be wrong on that. I'm guessing, taking the best guess. But there's little audio recordings. And this shows that he did go up and get that phone call. So he was heading there. But then something happened. And so hopefully I haven't confused anybody. So now if I flip this upside down, right? And there's a reason I did this. So this is, instead of this being north, this is south. I flipped this up because remember, site 1 was way over here and they came up, and site 2 is kind of, up north past this a little bit. This is the Valley Parkway, Sun Valley Parkway. Now let's listen to the audio, well, not listen to, but look at the text of what the audio recording was putting out. So here it is. In the audio section of the report, I located audio files. 6 files from the morning of 6/23. Between the hours of 8:49 and 8:58 a.m. Keep in mind, remember, at 9 a.m., Ken is claiming that he is seeing Daniel arrive. So then we go on to read at 8:49 and a half, now of course in quotations, and a half quarter mile, turn left onto I-10 East ramp to Phoenix. He doesn't turn left, possibly because it's getting close to 9 a.m. Maybe traffic's really rough on I-10 and he just wants to go a back way. Then it says a half mile, turn left onto West Broadway Road. And I'll kind of show you how this kind of makes sense. But here's basically what his phone and vehicle were doing. So he didn't turn left because obviously, we would be driving south. And so to turn onto I-10, we'd be taking a left if we were heading south. But he doesn't do that. Then there's multiple roads down there, Broadway Road, Southern Avenue, Baseline Road, and he passes most of those. So he keeps telling him in a half mile, turn left. He doesn't take that left. He continues on, and a half mile, turn to the next left, and then eventually he does get onto Arizona 85, and then eventually, allegedly, this West MC 85, which I'll show you on the map. So do you guys see where now things are starting to unravel here immensely? Because again, this is data, and it's even saying this is if I'm correct, this is the infotainment data matching up with the mile IQ data from his phone. Because I don't know what else would be spitting out I know you could log in on your phone and have that be spitting out, but that I don't think that was mentioned in the thing. And I don't think the mile IQ, now maybe they have that now, but remember, he obviously had, Infotainment Center, which you can obviously just, plug in a destination. And I think that's why we've got that audio. That would make sense. Like an actual audio recording is because that's coming from the info. If anybody knows in chat, I'm pretty sure, like if I had to bet of all the devices, the EDR, that doesn't make sense. It'd be either the infotainment or the phone, but how would you actually get audio, right? So the infotainment would make sense. So keep that all in mind, because right now he should be heading up north according to the official narrative, because remember, Ken supposedly sees him at 9. Then he allegedly goes to the Shell gas station. And this is where he has 2 transactions that we know of, and maybe David could maybe even correct me, but they know that there was 2 charges. We'll look at those in a minute. But one of them was for $10.55. All it says is Shell gas station. It does specify with the 1055. It says that it's used for gas. Allegedly, it's like under the gas thing, which that would kind of make more sense. 1055. And then there's the $3.83. There's 2 transactions on his card. The only thing is that we don't know which one is which, like which one goes where, right? So keep that in mind. I feel like I missed one other point I wanted to make out. And apparently there's no video that we know of from the other Shell gas station. And they're not specific in the report either, like address-wise or either, which is kind of frustrating. Yeah, I'll kind of explain, because I think something just happened here just after the phone call. This is one of my working theories. Obviously, many could change. But I do wonder if while he pulled over, that maybe, let's say if it's an inside job, that's where they were going to, kind of get rid of him. Or it could have been, maybe the cartel or something where when he pulled over, took that phone call with Steve, then something happened there. And now he's got somebody in the backseat or something with him, now kind of commanding where he goes. So remember, in scenario A, at about 9 a.m. is when he's allegedly arriving, according to Ken. But here is our end time at 9:05, and guess what the GPS location is? It is this Shell gas station. And if you look at this Shell gas station, let's just say just one mini working theory. I'm sure many of you guys probably have some as well. If you look at this, let's just say maybe they're going to tell him hey, we just want money from your ATM card. Go to the nearest ATM, whatever. Look at this. I mean, you could have them, tell them to follow this, and then have somebody waiting for this whole thing to show up here and then ambush him, and then somebody walk in and use his card or whatever. Or they could just go to the pump and force him to pump the $10 because they knew he needed some gas. If that happened at this gas station. But yeah, just one of my theories, I thought, because right after this, remember, there's only 3 trips in this Mile IQ, and the last one is the big one. I mean, they're all huge because, again, this proves that he is now, with the audio recording of the directions, he's clearly not going north to Site 2. He is now heading south. And again, it sounds like the infotainment is corroborating with his cell phone data. So, yeah, not very public. Yeah, I mean, look, one more time. Just look as we back out. Now, I'm sure this was taken. Let's see, when was this taken? Well, it says 2025, but I know the data. Actually, let me take a street view. Let's see, when was this? 2024. Usually sometimes they're about a year or 2 behind with the satellite imagery. Maybe that's coming in faster because there's more satellites in the air. But yeah, even now, even if this is up to date, I mean, look at it. I mean, it is. You got the gas station. It is nowhere. I mean, look at this. Right? So maybe they told him hey, we just want, let's say if it was just a thug, right? And maybe it had nothing to do with the corporation. You could say, oh, well, they told me he was going to go to the ATM, get money for him and let him go. And then that never happened. Or it could even more be deeper nefarious. But yeah. Not very populated. Yeah, easily. So continuing on, because then we get to trip 3, and this is where it flips everything on its head. So remember, at this time, he is allegedly supposed to be at the site.
My name is Ken Elliott. I'm a pump technician for Weber Water Resources. On the morning of June 23rd, we arrived at the job site at 9:30, and I walked over to Daniel's Jeep to introduce myself. We spoke about a few technical aspects of the job and where we were at on the development phase of this well. It was raining fairly hard at that point.
I agree, Jazz.
I had asked him whether or not he wanted to just hang tight and let this storm cell pass overhead before we started so we wouldn't get all of our paperwork wet. Must have been the only tracks.
So now we get into trip number 3. And then this is where it really flips everything on its head. I mean, it already started, but again, it correlates with the beginning times, right? The beginning timestamps. That's why it's like, this seems very legit, because it backs up data that we have with other systems to a point. But then, you know, there starts to be some discrepancies. So as we see, as he went from, you know, the site 2 and he was halfway to, or as he was from site 1 and he was heading to site 2, then he gets his phone call. Then clearly he now is heading south, away from site 2, away from Ken, and now is heading to this gas station, which we literally have an end time at 9:05. And if you look at this timestamp here in the infotainment, 9 a.m. and 9:06, which kind of correlates that here he is, you know, around this gas station. And the GPS locations are the Shell gas located at this 26,602 West MC85. Then we look at trip 3. Start time 9:07, so 2 minutes after. So right in, look, I mean, look, we have that 9:06 log. So that makes perfect sense. That lines up with him being at this gas station allegedly, or nearby. Obviously, it doesn't mean he's exactly at the gas station. And then we have his final trip. That goes from 9:07 to 10:32 a.m. Oh, thank you, Siggy and Mike. Oh, PayPal. Oh, let me get to that. Okay, sorry, I got distracted here. Natalie, I want to say thank you for your generous donation. That is so sweet of you. God bless you, Natalie. Please show Natalie some love in the chat. I don't want to say your full name, of course, but thank you so very much. That is so awesome. God bless you. Okay. Wow. Thank you. So our start time, our end time at trip 2, right, shows the end location at Shell gas station. So now our start time, well, what do you know? It's the same thing. It's the same gas station at 9:07. So same coordinates. Then at 10:32 a.m., it logs in that the vehicle gives GPS coordinates. And again, the phone data out in that area was decent. It says that Jeep is now in the ravine by 10:32. Which completely throws everything on its head. What do you guys think? And again, there's so much more. Again, this is just to kind of get the interest out there. But oh, thank you so much, Dr. Pepper Princess. That's a great name. So remember, we're told that at basically 12:54, if you want to round it up, at 1 p.m. is when that vehicle allegedly is dead. The vehicle records its last odometer reading, and allegedly with the official scenario A is when that vehicle ended up in the ravine. But according to his Mile IQ app, that vehicle is now in a ravine nearby. Criminal Man, you make a great question. And again, as we'll start to do, like, if this piques some interest, we'll do a part 2, and we'll kind of, that's where I was like, I started this and I was like starting to do the miles and stuff. And I noticed as I was doing that, like, I felt like I was starting to confuse too much. Like there's way too much. Kind of calculating what should have been the mileage and what was the mileage, because there's so many different like stops depending on if you're going off the infotainment or the Mile IQ. So I kind of wanted to leave that for like another show, but yes, I think, oh, you're trying to guess, so here's the gas station, right? So it's, nose itches. I'm nervous. Okay. So right there, right? There we go. Directions. Okay, let me flip it. Oops. Shell right there. His vehicle, oh gosh. It's been a while because they've added stuff. I'm sure they're going to yell at me. Oh, I'm kind of familiar. 'Cause this is, I know. I think this might have been the left and right tracks. And then this is just a rough estimate, so. It is 33 minutes, but I don't know. Again, because I think you would have had to go this way. I hate when it does this. This is what happens when you don't have the roads. Hold on, let me back up. See if I better way to. No. Oh my heavens. Okay. Let's just make it not to get too right, because I know it's after that little curve there. Let's just put it, I could be wrong, but let's just put it there, right? Even though it's about a little bit more deeper into there. So 20 minutes, I'd add, another 15, 20 minutes easy. It could be more than that, because remember, once you get into this, you're driving really slow. So, yeah, this is that area, and then it's like down here. But I don't know if I can really take it in there with it really being accurate, because, again, you really have to start slowing down when you get in there. So, that says 30 minutes, but that's not at the exact spot it was found in. So, again, take that with a grain of salt. Now, remember, trip 3 is a little over an hour and a half. Yeah, so it's almost about an hour and a half. So, that is interesting. That's something I'll have to ask my buddy about. Again, I wanted to try to keep it like as close to the scenario A and B, and just kind of focus on one kind of particular thing before getting into the miles and the distances, because again, that'd just be a whole separate live. And then we've got the motives with the water levels and stuff that I would love to hear, what Carolyn has to say, if we could, extend this out to a couple lives. But yeah, pretty wild. You have data from a phone.
Police Detective Larry Biffin.
That does line up with the infotainment center to a point for the first bit. And then even lines up with the audio. Again, we're talking infotainment with the phone.
Several other officers arrived on scene at around 11 a.m. to examine the Jeep. A shirt, a reflective vest with the Matrix logo, a pair of mismatched socks and jeans turned inside out. Daniel's wallet was in the pocket of those jeans. Inside the Jeep, police recovered Daniel's cell phone, car keys, a backpack containing his work laptop and documents, several bags of soil samples, a hard hat, multiple unopened water bottles, and other personal belongings.
So again, so there's so much more. I knew I was like, I'm gonna end up doing like a 3-hour live, and I hate to do those long lives. So I'm gonna try to cut it to about try to go about 30 minutes tops, mods. And I appreciate everybody being here, because it's just us, Crystal, being nervous. It's a tick. Sometimes it happens. Anyway, so yeah, because I want to keep it so it's not too long, so I don't lose people. But we'll just leave some last things. It just shows you just how much there is to this case. But when you look at this mile IQ, which is in the data, that is legit data, right? And you could try to explain, because I try to think about, well, could it have been like trips that he took previous before that? But then again, there's so many issues with that. Because what are the chances he's lining up to go up to these certain job sites, which I'm sure change all the time, every time he's going out. And, usually that data is pretty sound. So let's just go over a few major red flags about the vehicle. Again, there's so many, but let's go over the main ones. So as I foreshadowed before, and again, we haven't even talked about like what could have happened really. Again, that's really for a part 2 and a part 3. One of my theories, it's just a shot in the dark, is, clearly, when he was going up on trip 2, where he was going to the second job site, he got that call from the boss. And then from there, maybe he's on this road. Dude, can we see this road? Maybe there was an ambush waiting for him, right? So he pulls over. Obviously, this is the middle of nowhere. Even though there's a few cars on the road, I'm sure this is a fairly desolate road. He pulls over. And again, maybe if it's an inside job, then they know, like when they call him, they know that he's on his way. So he's probably somewhere on the Sunway Valley Park. So, or there could just be random attackers that wanted to take his money, and then things kind of went south. Siggy and Mike, thank you so much for the gifted Mob Crew membership. God bless you. So again, we see. So remember, there's 40 plus attempt starts, and allegedly, after the 40 plus attempts, the car started. So this is where the whole if it crashed at that 12:54. And you find the car with it in drive, and there's another 11 additional miles. How did they get that car started when it would have to be put in park, and it would have to have its...
Like the kind that deploy
the brake pads would be pushed on.
Bags. When that happens, the vehicle won't start unless you follow a specific sequence outlined in the Jeep's own manual. Whoever was with the vehicle after the crash tried, again and again, to get it started. Eventually, they pulled the manual out and got it running at 12:54 p.m. Buckeye PD called these ignition attempts unexplainable because they didn't want to explain them.
That's something we can't explain.
Begs the question again. The family is saying it's.
And here's a look at the vehicle. And again, this is where we'd have to get into part 2, where there's again, because remember, this is kind of like an accident expert, and he's saying like, this is some weird damage to the vehicle that doesn't really line up with just a car kind of landing in a ditch. Again, I'm not an expert, and maybe could be a reasonable explanation, but the two biggest things, and again, there's many more, I should say there's plenty more, but one of the main things is there's this big crack on the windshield, right? Almost like someone like threw a brick at it or something, which he finds very interesting. And then the other main one is this huge damage to the bumper area, as like if it hit like a boulder. And he found that very odd, with what the alleged narrative is. And then remember, only one window was busted out. But again, it's on the side that it didn't land on. There's so many, and I know I don't want to go too like super late. But yeah, he's talking about that. So there's the vehicle. So not to mention, as you can see right here, here's his boot, and it looks like it's like squished between the sunroof attachment. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. The sunroof panel, that's what it'd be. And that's one of his boots. Now, unless that panel was kicked out by him prior or after the accident, the only other thing this boot could have came out of was this driver's side window. But this is where I wish they could have done like that LiDAR thing where they use for vehicle reconstruction, vehicle accident reconstruction, and scan like the terrain in 360, and then they like build like a recreation of how this landed, because the official narrative is it just kind of like went into the ditch, right? Kind of like nosedived, then kind of flipped and then landed on its side, on the driver's side there with or on the passenger side, I'm sorry, with the driver's side window up. So again, if that's all it did is just kind of land and then just kind of flip over on one side, how'd this boot go flying out and end up wedged under the vehicle? Again, not saying that couldn't happen. Again, I have to always play devil's advocate and look at things from all angles, but man, that is weird. And again, that's just one of many that we could, I wish we had more time to dive into.
Who says the crash data doesn't add up.
The detective told him the vehicle rolled down the ravine. I looked at the photo. I said that vehicle never rolled. It got to the bottom and tipped on its side. That's all it did. So I can't rule out foul play. So I don't know how Buckeye can.
Buckeye police say they're taking another look at the crash data in the coming days with an expert, but still don't suspect foul play. BPD also released a partial police...
The police impound lot to view the vehicle. The detective stated that they plan to analyze Daniel's cell phone and the Jeep's event data recorder, also known as a vehicle's black box, in hopes of uncovering any clues about what had happened 30 miles per hour. More notably, after the airbags deployed, the Jeep's ignition button was pressed over 40 times, suggesting multiple attempts to restart the vehicle. Additionally, the odometer reading at the time of the crash was recorded at 58,001.
So this is the last three things we'll touch on to leave you with, but I promise you these will be interesting. I mean, we've kind of hinted at them, but just kind of recap the big ones. So here is that guy again. This is a random YouTuber that covered the case, and he drove out to the actual location where they found the vehicle. And I think even he says in his video, he's like, man, this is rough. Even with, again, he's kind of got a mid-size SUV, what I'm sure with some four-wheel. But again, without that lift, big lift and suspension, again, even, these decent, SUVs, it's rough because you have what's called ruts, and you've got to kind of follow them. Like they kind of lead the way. And this is a perfect example. You're hitting ditches, you go, and then look what happen. You got another ditch, it may not be, like a huge ditch, but you got, this pit. And that's why they I think one of the theories is like, how'd this guy end up reaching 30 miles per hour as it was allegedly recorded before it ended up into this ravine? Unless there was much more that happened. So again, and I think the ravine is just right here. And again, you've got, I wish he would have shown
is
the
the
whole
most
drive.
important piece of
I think he kind of cuts out a little bit before he reaches the exact ravine. He's right there though. But it would have been interesting to show him, maybe zoom in a little bit closer and show like how it kind of zigzags a little bit. And yeah, I'm not saying it's not possible, but my hell, I'm sure you'd be messing up your vehicle, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're, hitting something and getting stuck, or I don't know. So that's a couple of things because it's already. So remember, they're trying to say that this 1254 is like a stop time, right? But from what I've heard, and again, I am so far from an expert when it comes to car experts, so I'm just kind of listening to who knows more than I do. They say, it doesn't really make sense that this is a stop time that the odometer read, because this is like when allegedly a big vehicle, damage to the vehicle happens. You would think, if anything, it's going to record a start time. And remember, the ignition was started up 40 plus times. And then the last discrepancy is, so, they have the 1254 allegedly 154 miles on it. But after being taken back, it had 11 additional miles. Now, this is an electronical odometer. From what I understand, the battery has to be, alive. It can't be dead for it to be recording those mileage. Because some try to say that, why it was being towed out, that it was picking up miles as the wheels were spinning. Apparently, the wheels don't really spin with this kind of vehicle and this kind of damage. And it was, even though it was pulled out, I think originally on just like a tow hitch just to get it out there. Obviously, I don't know how else you get out. But once it got, to the main road, they then put it on a flatbed. And that's way less than, that's just 4 miles, 4.5 miles or something like that. So that doesn't really explain the 11 extra miles, unless this 1254 was another start time, right?
Revealed something critical. The vehicle was turned on after the accident that deployed the airbags. Understanding this clears up a lot of the discrepancies we've seen so far. Remember those 40-plus attempts to restart the Jeep after a crash?
I know you mentioned that.
There's a reason for that. The Jeep Renegade comes equipped with a fuel shutoff system that activates during severe collisions, like the kind that deploy airbags. When that happens, the vehicle won't start unless you follow a specific sequence outlined in the Jeep's own manual. Whoever was with the vehicle after the crash tried, again and again, to get it started. These ignitions that showed up on the odometer as the crash happened. Tow mileage? More nonsense.
Police department wasn't.
They're just wrong.
So kind of
Another
finish
11
up 'cause,
mile
gosh,
deployed
there's
and
so
driven
much.
further. Port claims those 11
And
miles.
I would have had like more, so I'm kind of glad I cut here. I can't believe, actually, I'm not surprised because I was trying to get as much information. Hopefully, this was like, for those that have been here with us most of the time, kind of this, what I've shown, it kind of explains sense. It makes sense. Explains sense. Makes sense. The other thing that kind of proves that there's something fishy is, remember, in scenario A, he only stops at one gas station. Now, it's always possible, because remember, when he's going from his home to job site 1, he hits the gas station just before. Now, and then from there, that's when he goes to job site 2, and then he ends up missing. So how does he get 2 different charges? Now, I guess you could say, just to play devil's advocate, after he hits the gas station, goes to job site 1, then before going to job site 2, he hits that gas station once again. But I'm not saying it's not possible, but it seems kind of weird. Especially, it's too bad. It'd be nice to know the order, which one is which. You know, if the $383 came first or the $10 was first. From what I understand, it was the $383 that came first, but it could be switched. But if you think about this, this does then prove that he hit up 2 different gas stations, right? Which prove the so now you have a debit card, cell phone data, and the infotainment data, all corroborating, a similar event, events that kind of get pieced together here. It'd be nice to know more details about this one, but I find this area sketchy, right? Super sketchy. And again, remember, his phone logged this GPS location twice on his phone. I don't think that's no accident with the start and stop time. It's so job site 1 to job site 2 is, oh, I know I have the address. Did I take a screenshot of that? Did I take a screenshot of it? Oh, he sent me some new stuff, and I don't know if I screenshotted that or not. Oh, I took the same statement. Is that one? Oh, yeah, so... Oh, there you go. So... Yeah, it is 23.6 miles. I believe that, no, because I think that's from the gas station. No, that's from the gas station. That's not from the job site 1 and 2. I'll have to get that data. I know my buddies, if he's looking. Oh, actually, no, here, well, that's not quite even the full stop. Yeah, I don't, unfortunately, I mean, could I look at that and get a guess at it? Sure. We'll give it a whack. Give me a second. So that goes up here. Oh, why does it gotta do this? Okay, you know what? Let's do... Let's do this. Let's pump that in, and then... Here we go. So it is right as it's hitting that. Right there. Why did I not put in directions? That's it. No, come on. Okay, let me see if this will work. There we go. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this will work. Okay, so it is... as it hits up there. There we go. So it is... now keep in mind it's not directly... the job site's a little bit further in, right? So it's like right here. But I want to like screw it up. But it is just right there. So from job site 1 to job site 2, it is about 23, 24 miles. So obviously mile per minute. So 23, 24 minutes. Yeah. Hopefully that kind of answers the question. Again, there's so much. Yeah, technically, I think, right? Yeah, except for he lived in Tempe, his apartment, but I think all the job sites, I'm not sure exactly where the office was at. I'm sure I could get that answer, but again, what do you guys think? I mean, you have, the infotainment data, but then when you throw in this mile IQ, which again, I don't have mile IQ, but I have like basically the same thing and know what it does. And yeah, it's pretty spot on. I mean, it just uses our, the basic stuff that you would be using with Google Maps if you're trying to find point A to point B. It's just using the same stuff. And again, it's really focused on the mileage, but it has a point A and point B. So yeah, but it tells a completely different story that vehicle allegedly was in the ravine by 10:32 a.m. Then I think it was probably, again, that's where you have to kind of start to stretch and think, was it have been there the whole time? Where did we get the 1254? Or did it end up near that ravine? They met up somewhere. Then they went joyriding, because there's a lot of mileage. The one thing that, has always been something that people talk about is the miles don't add up. Like from when he allegedly, if you go with scenario A, after he left Ken, he puts on, let me look at the mileage again. He ends up putting on, an extra 24 miles when really his vehicle was just found 4 miles away from the job site. So again, like what he's out there joyriding for, and 24 miles in a desert like that, not to say you can't put that on, but if you're going, again, you're not driving on a freeway, you are going through some rough road. That's a lot of miles to just put on for just joyriding in the desert. I don't know. Allegedly, he was like tired, wanted to take a nap. Like, is he driving around for 4 hours, like half asleep, like, and not have an accident within the first 20 minutes to an hour, right? So there's just a lot. I could get that information. Again, if you guys want, we'll definitely do a part 2. Won't be tomorrow or something, but maybe we could do it, definitely within the week. Because, this took a lot just to put this together, and I feel like, we'll probably get more people on, and I'll need to kind of like shorten this to where I can kind of explain, as I always do, kind of a timeline add this in. We'll probably just cut out all the, the stuff with the McGrath, and then kind of go towards the mileage and the difference and, discrepancies there. And then, then we can look into, as well as, potential motives, which again is, did he find something that, again, because like Carolyn said earlier, there's a lot of money riding on these, new developments. And again, these guys are contracted, and they, these are the guys that say yay or nay, from what I understand, or at least part of that process. And I'm sure they don't want to hear nay, as, obviously they want to make money and build developments. And, Daniel came across some stuff that he didn't like and was showing that. And, maybe they said, no, we're going to try to push this to say that there's the water and the soil's good. And then, Daniel's like, I'm not comfortable with this, especially, maybe that kind of explains a little bit of that podcast, and he's trying to change himself. There's so many different avenues to go from there. But I think the biggest part is, there's data there that legit suggests that there's something else that happened, and it's backed up by multiple other things of data, so I do think there is a lot to be unpacked here. I think he probably would, to be honest with you, and maybe we'll have David on. I'd be honored to. I'm sure, well, I don't want to make any promises, but, yeah, that would be really cool. Do an interview with his dad. We could definitely probably do that. I know somebody that knows I'm sorry, David. I'm dyslexic, so I flip names. But yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I would like to build a little bit of an audience, and hopefully, so that way I feel like, when we have him on, we can really, get out his, what he's been doing. And I know he's always preparing for new searches and, needs help. So, but I apologize, D, Sensei. I don't know if Edjaz was in here the whole time or not, but I know she was there in the beginning. But I appreciate everybody. Oh, and I think I saw Jennifer in here as well. Thank you, ladies, for helping mod. And, of course, thank you to my wonderful patrons and members. And then, of course, a huge shout-out to those that help support me with the GoFundMe. I mentioned at the beginning of my live, but I wanted to mention it again when I have more people on the show. But if you missed it earlier, I just want to say thank you to those that could afford to donate to the GoFundMe. I've reached half my goal, a little more than half, maybe, I think. And just that alone is, I can't tell you how grateful I am, and how that's just going to help me out in so many ways. And I just can't thank you guys all enough for the love and support. But yeah, maybe, again, I know Carolyn's, she's super smart, and I'm sure, she's very popular, but maybe, if I could get some data, maybe I could throw her way, or, I don't know. I don't want to put her on the spot, but I'm grateful for Carolyn just coming in and sharing her thoughts, even though we really didn't talk much about the kind of potential motives, but I'm sure she would, it would be interesting to hear more from her as we maybe go down that route. But I think if we do a part 2, maybe we kind of go into the mileage a little bit more, and the Jeep as well, like what was found. Again, there's a lot. There's a lot. Again, this was started at 5:30. Holy cow. So this was 2.5 hours show, much longer than I usually go. So that just kind of shows you how much I've been kind of preparing for this. And again, there's so many people to thank. And those people know, hopefully they know who they are. So with that, I'll end it there. Again, grateful to see David in there, popping in, showing his support and love that he's not giving up on his son. We won't either. And as always, we'll be covering, Sebastian and Lily and Jack. And I'm trying to also work on a video for Charlie Kirk, but I don't know. I kind of had a snag in that. But yeah. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that, Carolyn. God bless you. Yeah, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts for sure. So, all right, guys, we'll end it there. Please like, subscribe if you haven't already. And again, thank you so much for the love and support, guys. And I'm trying to think of something I can do, for the GoFundMe, as it kind of tapers down. But it is in the description if you're interested. I didn't want to feed it in the chat today because I just wanted to get this show out and get hopefully people kind of stirred up that there's definitely legit evidence that suggests there's something else that went on, and it's there, and and there's multiple other things that back up that theory, or not even theory, that data. So it's pretty big. Omi, thank you so much, Omi, for the $20 and all of them before that. God bless you. And we will keep David in our prayers, along with Daniel, and hopefully he gets answers eventually, and we'll kind of keep knocking on that door and pulling threads, as we like to call it. So happy Monday, everybody. God bless. And we will talk to you guys most likely tomorrow. If not, I'll have a video. Tomorrow's the 1st. I may have to go do some things, but if not, we'll be back live Wednesday. Or is it Tuesday today? No, today's Monday, right? No, today's Tuesday. I'm sorry. It's Tuesday. My bad. Anyway, but yeah, so we will see you guys Wednesday or Thursday.